The truth can hurt you, or the truth can change you. But with truth, do you?
I just wanna be happy, but if I keep on doing the things that keep on bringing me pain, there's no one else I can blame.
If I'm not happy, wasted time, but now I can see the biggest enemy, it was me. So I'm not happy. Cry yourself to sleep, shout and raise your hand. It won't change a thing, child, until you understand. If you're tired of being the same, if you're tired of things not changing, it's time for you to get out the way. Don't get stuck in how you feel. Say Jesus take the wheel. He knows the road that you need to take. If you wanna be happy, hey, hey, oh, don't you wanna be happy? I just wanna be happy. But if I keep on giving my heart for people to tear apart, the healing will never start. So I can be happy. Will I ever be happy? Cry yourself to sleep, shout and raise your hand. It won't change a thing, child, until you understand. If you're tired of being the same, if you're tired of things not changing, it's time for you to get out the way. Don't get stuck in how you feel. Say Jesus take the wheel. He knows the road that you need to take. Yeah, it's so easy to complain, addicted to the pain. You give your heart and push it away. Oh, Jesus knows just how you feel. Just let Him take the wheel. The love you need already gave. The question is, do you wanna be happy? Oh, I just wanna be happy. Yeah, you say yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe you say yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe you say yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe you say yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, if you're tired of being the same, you're tired of things not changing, it's time for you to get out the way. Don't get stuck in how you feel. Say Jesus take the wheel. He knows the road that you need to take. Yeah, it's so easy to complain, addicted to the pain. You give your heart and push it away. Oh, Jesus knows just how you feel. Just let Him take the wheel. Love you need already gave. The question is, do you wanna be happy? Lord, I wanna be. Oh, I just wanna be happy.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, check my swag.
I got you. See, lately I've been seeing others judge others based on their appearance and how they dress. Saying you gotta look a certain way to go to Christ. See, I think different. Check my swag, I'm filled with the spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm feeling. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. Check my swag, I'm filled with the spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm feeling. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. I go by the name Forgiven, cause simply I'm forgiven. I sold my soul to God, confess my sins, and then He cleansed me. People steady judging, based on my appearance. Yeah, they see the
tattoos and earrings, assume that Christ ain't hit me.
I could change your perception if you take the time and listen. He gave me a second chance and He put me on a mission. I ain't never killed nobody, had no warrants and went to prison. I sold and did drugs, I'm ashamed, I must admit it. Think I never got addicted, mad off and committed. Most of it was peer pressure just to fit in a recognition. But now it's all different, He's the reason my better living. The reason that I've written every verse you hear me spitting. Back then I might have lost faith and forgot about religion. Come to think about it, I was faking and pretending. I don't need no herb, cause with Christ I'm always lifted. So if my parents is my only bad habit, I guess I'm living. My swag, I'm filled with the spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm fitted. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. Check my swag, I'm filled with the spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm fitted. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. I'm here for a reason, to make His name famous. I'm not who I used to be, so my life and rearrange it. In return, I spread His word, to make them understand. No matter what they feel, it's never too late to start changing. In the end, it's coming soon, read it up in Revelations. My goal to show you it's real, no matter what, you gotta face it. It ain't no way around it, so stop the pump faking. Realize you need Christ, and without me you won't make it. And you know I speak that real talk in every conversation. Man, I'm unashamed, and I tell that to the public. The truth might scare a few, but I promise it's gonna touch it. Make a difference from a distance, and I call that getting buckets. And I praise Him with both hands, I'm surrender like I'm busted. They looking at me like I'm weird, I shout out that I love Him. I overcome anything, I ain't scared of nothing. Any weapons thrown at me shall prosper, that's why I trust Him. Check my swag, I'm filled with His spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm fitted. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. Check my swag, I'm filled with His spirit. And yeah, I'm tatted up with earrings and I'm fitted. Yeah, they quick to judge me, and they don't even know me. But if they take a second, see, I'm filled with His glory. So that tells you, just because a person's dressed a certain way or look a certain way, doesn't mean he doesn't have Christ in him. You don't gotta look a certain way to go to Christ. You can be at your lowest, you can still go to Him. Luke 6:37. Judge not and you will not be judged. Condemn not and you will not be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. And that's just what I done. Check my swag.
Okay.
There we go. I was kind of the Lone Ranger for a second.
Now what's going on? All right. So, but yeah, so let everybody know a little bit about your story. Now I let everybody know directly. So you are from Philadelphia. So right now your football team is loving you guys is right now. Your bye week was last week. You guys get back into it. So all y'all Eagles fans out there, y'all are loving this woman. But
And the
you
baseball and baseball.
a
World Series,
baseball.
baby.
But you were in a tragic situation had happened to you. But you turned that into something that is going to be more memorable to not only yourself but others around the world. You're a
Yeah.
comedian. You're a mental health advocate. You're a business owner. So I mean, you've had history is repeating itself to a whole new platform, a whole different platform. So let us know directly off the top. Um, how did you get? First of all, can you let us know a little bit about what happened? Can you replay to us a little bit what happened? Um, how did you survive the gunshots and stuff like that that had
Well,
happened as well?
well, there were no gunshots. I do like to say from back shots to gunshots is a Philly love story. That doesn't pertain to my trauma. Mine was a knife play. So for me, when I was 18, I went to Bloomsburg University. It was in the Poconos. It was 2.5 hours away from home. I was 17 when I graduated high school, so I was ready to be on my own. I thought I was grown and I knew everything, of course. Um, when I went to school, I used to sit outside the library a lot because I love to read, and it just kind of kept me focused. It was next to a coffee shop, so it was kind of all in one. And I used to see this guy. When I first met him, I was coming out of the bathroom in the library and I dropped the book and he handed it to me. Nothing weird about that. We went back and forth conversation and then I'd see him all the time. So we do like the nod, or the hey, or make small talk, things like that. Um, and maybe 6 months after we first met, he had offered me a ride home. We happened to be leaving the library at the same time. And I accepted because I was like, I'm kind of a chunky girl myself. I'm a little lazy. And the idea of walking in the cold down the big hills that are at Bloomsburg was just not appetizing to me that day. So instead of turning to go to my dorm, he turned on the highway instead. And it was about 6 hours of being in the car and basically him telling me I'm going to die and trying to break my spirit. And he tried a few times. He pulled over to pull me from the car. But I am from Philly and I am pretty fiery. So I put up a pretty big fight. But the third time, I think he was just like running out of gas and running out of options and patience. So he had a knife at that point and led me by knife point into the woods. And I mean, after that, it was just a brutal sexual assault and a lot of stabbing me with a knife and, poking and prodding, but not quite deep enough to leave a scar or, bleed out completely. And honestly, I didn't even know this part had happened until this year when I finished my trauma narrative. But when this happened and he was after the sexual assault, he basically laid it out to me that he never went to my school. He had gotten a flat tire doing something for his mom on campus and saw me, noticed that I didn't talk to anybody really, noticed that I was never there with anybody else. Nobody was coming over to talk to me, nobody was waving at me. I wasn't on my phone a lot. So to him, that meant I was an easy target. Honestly, I still call it divine intervention, and I still think there's a whole astro projection kind of mystical way that I survived. But basically, he heard a noise and took off and left me there. And I followed what light I could find out of the woods to the highway and back home. It was a long journey. So,
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm glad that, God, first of all, kept you here, not just for this interview, but just in general.
me too.
And one of the biggest things that I look at it from that perspective is that you are here to teach other young ladies because you hear on college campuses now that, they should never walk by themselves. like very recently, there was a huge situation happening at the University of South Carolina a couple years ago, and it was a Uber driver, and the girl went missing because of this Uber driver, but this Uber driver wasn't a real Uber driver. She was unfortunately intoxicated, and the guy kidnapped her and unfortunately had killed her. So the one thing I want to ask you is, what steps did you go through on this trauma to start getting your back to, getting yourself back to what we consider the new normal for you would be?
So I'm going to keep it 100. I did not do anything at first. I told nobody for over 10 years. Because number one, I thought I was just kidnapped and I was kind of embarrassed. Like, you were 18, that's embarrassing, you know? Number two, I knew if I had told my mom that, she would never stop hunting this person down. And I could not guarantee that I could pinpoint this person in a crowd. I didn't want my mom to go through that. And I didn't want my mom to know that I suffered in any kind of way. It wasn't until 2020, and maybe the summertime, I decided, like, I can't live like this anymore. I was having night terrors. I wrote the Hoe handbook, but the reason I wrote the Hoe handbook is because I can't do relationships or sleepovers with men, because if they smiled at me a certain way, I'd freak out and I'd black out, and I didn't want to have to explain that because I didn't want to tell anybody what happened. But I finally had enough and I started seeing a therapist, and we just started really going into what happened. So at this point in my head, I was just kidnapped and I was walking home. That's all I remembered. I knew I got triggered by smiles, but I didn't know why I did. So when I started going into this with my therapist, we were maybe 6 sessions in. My little sister died at 18, the same age that I was when I should have been dead. And it triggered something in my brain where I really don't remember much of anything of the next year and a half up until this year. And it just got really bad with the vices, drinking, drugs, having people over, anything I could do to not be sober and not think about it, because I was starting to get more flashbacks. I was starting to get more night terrors, and I didn't know why. It actually ended, or started, I should say, my path to where I am now in April of this year, because I made an attempt on my life. I had given myself a heart attack the week before from usage, extracurriculars. I didn't care anymore. I didn't value myself. I didn't think I had anything to offer the world. And I just was over it, When I made an attempt, I went to the hospital and I got diagnosed with a few mental health conditions. But really the main turning point in that hospital was, this was the first time I was by myself with no distractions. No phone, no kid, because I am a single mom, no 2 jobs, no TV, nothing, but an empty waiting room and my memories. And everything that I had held down and back and kept quiet about for more than 10 years literally flooded my brain. And I had no choice but to watch the entire thing over again. And it's so weird trying to explain it, but I was not in that hospital waiting room, because this experience in the hospital lasted over 30 hours. It was 30 hours of me not able to discern what was reality and what was not, because I literally watched, like a Lifetime movie I didn't ask to, what happened to me at, a fresh 18 years old. And this is where I started seeing the sexual assault. I started seeing the knife. I started seeing that this was way more than the kidnapping that I thought it was. And it was so bad that I literally, I can't imagine what this hospital saw in my behavior, because it was primal to me. I was not there at all, and anytime I talk about it, like, I could smell the trees. I could feel crisp air. Like, I was literally in those woods again, watching it from start to finish. And that's the start of how I found out what I'd actually been through. And it started my healing journey, because before I didn't care to even think about it, because again, I was embarrassed, for one, and for two, I didn't know there like I had unanswered questions, but I didn't really want to know, but when I had no choice but to watch it, and now all my questions are starting to get answered, I really broke down when I got out of that hospital and sat and rewrote what I could remember over and over and over again. It's called a trauma narrative. And so I remembered every single detail of that night. And it took me a very long time to recover after that from those memories.
So how has the healing process been going for you now? Like I know that you just got to that point and so forth, but how's your healing process been going now?
Honestly, I have made my peace with it. Um, Especially now, maybe like less than a month ago, I recorded my trauma narrative, my story, and I told it live on my page because I wanted to get my story out, because that was for me the main part of accepting it. First part of dealing with a trauma is accepting it actually happened. And that is the hardest part, to be honest, because you're in disbelief. Like that couldn't happen to me. It couldn't have been that bad. These are things that we tell ourselves. It wasn't even that bad, and that doesn't pertain to just what happened to me, just in general with trauma. We try to brush it off because as children, we're told to suck it up, or you're not tired. You don't know what tired is.
Right.
But in this case, it was like, no, this happened to me and this was horrible. And I don't even know who this person was. Who knows if this person did it to somebody else, and it's a process of going through survivor's guilt after the acceptance and moving on, to now tell my story in the hopes that if there's somebody else out there who, like me, was kind of ignoring that voice inside going, hey, I need some kind of justice, that they will step up and they will open their mouths and say something, because whether or not you think it's not a big deal, or whether or not you think people are going to believe you or not, you need to talk about it, because I did irreversible damage to my brain. I cannot be fixed, I'm damaged goods. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, I know for a fact, like with trauma, a lot of people have a hard time. So one of the things we talk about on the show is it's always good to talk to a therapist. I don't care what culture you come from, but I can tell you, like minority people say, don't go to the therapist. Go to
Church.
Jesus. Go to
Yep.
Jesus first, and then But we live by on Beyond the Airways that you can go to Jesus and then go see Dr. So and so, because you may
right.
need what they have to help you get to a certain place that you need. So with you seeing a doctor, whatnot, and getting what you need, I know for a fact in your bio, you're also a comedian. So how did that play in? Did you ever use part of that to understanding your set? Like how did that? Because I know a lot of comedians use your personal life part of their set. So did you end up doing that at some point, or did you just say, you know what, I'm going to remove that part of my mind, but just keep my set, going to be funny, and then that was it?
To be honest, I have not used any of it in my comedy, only because, like I said, this is so recent, and the comedy that I'm using right now is from my actual Ho handbook. So I haven't even gotten to even express that. The only joke that I really tell about it is there's only one thing that me and my potential killer had in common, and that's that we both can't kill somebody worth a damn. Which is kind of just a dark way, because I made an attempt on my own life and he made an attempt on mine too, and we were both absolute failures. So, it's you have to make jokes about it, and I do kind of to myself crack jokes in that way. But as far as on stage comedy, I don't think I'm at that point yet, because sometimes talking about it, like now, this is probably the easiest I've ever gone through that story, to be honest. I'm kind of proud of myself, because usually I get really choked up, or I get really, like, my chest seizes. So it's not to a point where I can just get up on stage and make a joke about it quite yet.
Well, I'm proud of you as well, because I know from traumatic as well, it's really hard to speak about it in general. But something like that, it would be really tough to speak about all the way around. Now, I want to touch into this as well real quick. You're a business owner as well. And one of the things that you've been working on really strong is mentality kill, if I said it correctly.
Mentally kill.
Mentally kill. And so what went into creating this project, and what went into wanting to do this project?
So when it came to mentally kill, this is something that I started maybe 6 months ago. It was right after I got out of the hospital and I finished my trauma narrative. Because, like I said, I've gotten some diagnoses, multiple, at the hospital. And, like, for example, borderline personality disorder, I had no idea what that was. I was like, does that mean there's like multiple people in me? Like, does that mean I'm like, I have multiple personalities? And no, it's just the one shitty one. That's all I have. But, they gave me no information about what they diagnosed me with when I was in the hospital. And I spent hours and days researching and becoming frustrated. And I was like, it should not be this hard to learn more about what I'm diagnosed with. This should be cut and dry. I should be given like a pamphlet or something. So what I did was I created what is now known as the Mentally Kill Project. And that consists of a podcast that has the 12 main mental health conditions. It's informational, in little 20-minute segments. It's like a snack pack. It gives you, what each condition looks like in yourself or in a friend or family member, what potential triggers are so that you can avoid them, and some coping mechanisms, things like that, just so you can get a little more information about each one. I'm working on season 2 right now, which will go into each individual disorder. And then season 3 will go into phobias. And with that podcast, I made a Facebook page to go with it. And it has, for right now, albums for the 12 main mental health conditions that are full of memes and quotes and infographics I've made and resources and coping mechanisms and things like that. Just so it's basically a one-stop shop. And beyond that, I started interviews with people all over the world who've been diagnosed with different mental health conditions, but also with doctors and therapists and advocates like myself, to not only show that people who have a diagnosis can live a fully fulfilled and successful and happy life despite their conditions, but also to show that they're not alone. There are people out there who don't even have a mental health condition that are there to help and support and be there for you. And, I just want to be able to make this a one-stop shop for all things mental health. I'm also working on educational material to take into elementary, middle, and high schools. And I'm also working with a woman who goes and speaks about suicide ideation in colleges to create a new presentation for that as well. So there isn't much I'm not doing.
I'm glad that you're touching on the mental health on suicide prevention, because I can tell you, from a veteran perspective, we have a slogan that every 22 seconds, a veteran either attempts suicide or has actually have had suicide, or related to someone who has committed suicide. And I can honestly come and tell you that it's really tough, because if those individuals are harming themselves because of life, um, and you got to think about it, like there's so many people who, in celebrities. I mean, we can take it to people that we've idolized over the years, such as Robin Williams, and we think about. I touched on this a show or two ago, where we think the biggest celebrities, even Christian men. There's something that I put on my radio show a couple of days ago, that even men have to mask, and when they mask, they've committed suicide. Myself has been one of those people. And the one thing about it in that aspect is that you're touching on that and you're hitting them, because now kids are different now. They're different and life hits them different. And parents are a little different now. I said earlier, I'm getting your bio stuff from there, but they're using these. And when they use the phones, they're on the phones not for reading a person's bio. They're on the phones for games and TikTok and Facebook,
Escapism.
and what I'm saying. And it's kind of crazy, because these kids are looking for opportunity with their parents. These kids are looking for opportunity with their loved ones and stuff like that, and it's not happening in the same way. So, first of all, I want to thank you for doing that, because not everybody is making an effort to do that.
Yeah, well, no problem. I think the biggest thing for me, number one, I love what you just said. Escapism is rampant in our society, especially with the younger generation. We're doom scrolling. We're spending so much time on our phone to escape reality. That's, you know, and that's a problem. And most of that has to do with because we're suffering from something and we don't want to open our mouths about it because we're afraid we may not be accepted if we do. But I'm here to tell everybody listening that there is always someone willing to listen. For example, my mentally kill page, I have people who work the suicide hotlines working the messenger on that page. If at any time someone messages, they will get an answer anytime. You know, if we're going to spend so much time on our phones, and this is why I geared it towards social media, if we're going to spend that much time on our phones, there should be resources like this available. You know, I know for me, when I was having those suicidal thoughts and I actually made the plan and was starting to go through with it, I didn't want to sit on a phone call. That's to me humiliating when I already feel pitiful. You know, and now you've got somebody on the other end scrambling to do their best to keep you here because you have value, of course. You know, you're worth something you just forgot. But when you're on that phone call, you don't really want to talk, you know? For me, if I could just send a message instead, that would make the difference for me. Or if I'm on the other side and I'm trying to keep someone here, I can now click their profile. I can now go to their page. I can see what they like, what they don't like, where they're from, their friends and family, in case I need to do a wellness check or alert authorities. You know, it just brings it to that next level and that deeper level to help bring people back when they have those suicide thoughts. So,
I mean, and that's why I think that it's so important because now, um, with social media being where it is, I mean, now we do have some people, celebrities who have done some things, but pressure of life gets to people, and you have to
absolutely.
know that it's not like my father's age. My father used to be like, "Oh, that's just life. Suck it up and just keep on going."
Yep.
Unfortunately, and now it's more of like, no, like that person is really hurting. They're really having some problems. They really need some. They really need some loving arms around them more than just suck it up and keep going. It's just not
That's
that
a big
type of
problem I have with
mindset.
my family too.
So it's tougher to have that mindset because it's not like that. Now the last thing I want to touch on real quick, and it's a very unique word, but in your early 20s, you say you wrote this book called Hoe Handbook. Now I want to know first and foremost how you came up with the word of the title of the book, and then the other part of it is, um, what will it teach a young lady and so forth, or just anybody in general? Because I think that is very unique that you decided to write this book, especially so early in your earlier years of life.
Yes. Well, I would just like to start by saying I was very toxic at that time, mainly towards men, just because I was so traumatized. You know, I just didn't want to be nice to men, I guess. But I wrote this book. Basically, what I did was I kept a notebook with me anywhere I went. Now, I don't have a romantic attachment to sex. It's absolutely relating to my trauma. It's not something I really care about even fixing, but irrelevant. I wrote this book because I was promiscuous, but I was very safe about it. I kept a roster of people, you know, they were my playmates, so to speak. And little lessons that I learned along the way, little tidbits of information, I would just write it in my notebook. And I turned that notebook into an actual book. Sorry, I have asthma. So when I wrote this book, it was basically teaching people how to please and be pleasing through sexual and self empowerment. I wanted you to be the biggest and the baddest. You know, I wanted you to feel like you were top tier all the time because I had spent so much of my life feeling like I wasn't worth anything that after when I started in my 20s and I started with this hoe handbook and I started getting a little more promiscuous, I didn't give myself an option but to feel top tier. When I walk into a room, everybody's there for me. Doesn't matter what they're there for. They're there for me. You know, I'd hit people with the double bounce when I'm walking down the stairs just to cause trouble because men will do the and fall or with their wives and I'm hitting them with the double bounce. They'll look and get in trouble. You know, I was a menace and I still am. I still live by these rules. Right now, I'm actually reworking that book from a 30-year-old and a little less toxic perspective. And that will be coming out next year. But I also geared my Hoe on the Go podcast around it as well. So now I give tips and tricks from my book and go over a wide range of topics because I will talk about things that people don't want to talk about or maybe uncomfortable talking about. I don't care. So that's kind
Well,
of where it came back to.
I mean, that's the one thing about it is that you're very open about writing a book, and that you're very promiscuous at that age, where a lot of young people are at that age. They are very promiscuous at that age, whether it's men or female, whether it's a physical. And now, I mean, pornography is huge for a lot of people as well.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest things that comes out of that is that you were very open to write a book. I don't know too many people that would have actually wrote a book at the age of 20 something, to sit there and say, this is, besides what Corinne Steffens wrote, a video vixen book, you know what I'm saying? But it was a situation where you wrote a book saying that this happened. This is something that I did. This is something that you're going to be revisiting because this is something that happened. But at the same time, it's like, boom, it's what it was, and you're not ashamed of it. And I think that's pretty awesome that you're
Thank
you're
you.
not ashamed that it happened, and that, and we all live about it. We all live about sex every day. It's just others will live at it stronger than others.
Well, I think for me, it was the main reason I put it into a book and kind of wrote it out was because no one really taught me anything about sex other than, hey, wrap it before you tap it. You know, there was no guidelines, there were no rules, there were no like what I should and should not do as a single girl or somebody going into sex for the first time. When I wrote this book, like for example, the number one rule in my whole handbook is to keep a hair tie around the wrist at all times. There's a little meaning behind that too. So the joke behind it is, so you can suck dick anywhere, anytime, any place. But in reality, it just means to be prepared always for anything. Just be prepared. With a hair tie, you could be ready for a fight. You could be ready for that. You could be ready for anything. There's a million reasons you could have a hair tie, but the main rule behind it, or the main story or lesson behind it, was to just be prepared. And when I wrote this book too, I wanted it because I used to teach classes on how to better please your partner at a sex club. I wanted to teach people what I'd learned. I'd studied people relentlessly during these classes, married couples, single, older, younger, to see how people behave before, during, after, in private, in public. I did nothing but study behavior in those, let's say playtimes, to learn more about how people behave so that I could put it in this book. Like, this is probably how you're going to feel after this, but don't worry, you're not alone. This is what you should do so that you don't, or this is why you should or should not, just kind of breaking things down for people so that I could give what I've learned to the world, especially for the younger generation, younger girls, younger guys. Because I am, as I like to say, ambisextrous. So I give tips for both. So I just wanted to be able to give people education.
Well, it's good that you give people education, because I think what most people need to understand is that educating those is always the number one goal, no matter what you're doing in life. Educating them, and then a lot of times you may educate yourself more, and that's what's also the number one thing as well. So my hat goes off, salute to you, because educating our people is something that's really tough. Some people can do it all the time, some people don't do it enough, and that's where it comes down to it, that everybody should be doing all the time. Now, my last little bit that I want to ask you, for the last little bit before we get ready to wrap up, is there anything that you could tell somebody that's going through a traumatic moment right now? Any best advice that you can give them, whether it's they're going through a traumatic experience that they've had? They may have said that they are depressed, because there's different stages of depression. A lot of people don't know
Right.
that. Is there any advice that you could give them, so they don't feel that same way, or they can definitely get the help that their desirely should have, or their family member, if their family members see them like this, what kind of advice could you give them?
Well, I'll start with the people who are struggling. Whether you're in a traumatic situation, or you've been through something traumatic, or you just feel like crap, because we all feel that way. Like you said, there's different levels of depression, but any level, don't forget that you have value. And that whether or not you feel like it, you are not alone. There are people out there who feel just like you do, and you can get better and you will get better, but not until you admit that you don't feel so great. If you stay quiet, that is dangerous. That's where those suicide ideations come in. That's where you're taking a literal life threatening risk. Open your mouth and tell someone. Tell a doctor, tell a close friend, tell a family member you're really close to. Just tell someone, I don't feel so great. This is what's happening. Talk to someone because it may be something that you need medicine for, especially for me. I had no idea why I felt so empty all the time. When in reality, I had borderline personality disorder. I just had no idea. And if I had opened my mouth and said something, I may not have suffered for so long. I hated myself for a long time because I was suffering. And it's more common to hate yourself than to love yourself enough to get the help that you need. And I also, for a friend or family member who may notice some things are a little bit off about someone that you love, same thing. Say something, but say something in a way where you want to help. If you're just going to say something to throw it in their face that maybe they haven't showered in a couple days, or, maybe they're not taking care of themselves the way they normally would, then don't even bother. You're not going to help. You're going to make it worse. But if you come to somebody and you say, what's going on? Something is going on that you're not telling me. They may not want to tell you, in which case you may need to seek additional help. But to start, listen, don't hear. Okay? Listen to what you're being told. Sometimes we want to express how we're feeling, but unfortunately, we're constantly given advice or berated or lectured about how we're feeling, when in reality, we just want to get it out. We just want you to listen. So if you approach somebody who's feeling down and out and they open their mouth and they're opening up to you, keep yours shut, other than, what can I do to help? That's really it.
Guys, it doesn't sound, obviously, it does not sound very hard. What you have to do is show somebody that you care, act like you care, and do the most important thing, be the person that really cares.
That's right.
Because if you are the individual that do all those three things, you can make a huge impact. I can tell you right now from a personal experience, one person, if you go to somewhere and on this show, if we say one person life, that's one person that just we did not have an opportunity to say prior to before. So, but it's not just with us, it's with you. So, real quick, can you let everybody know your social media so they can reach out to you as well? And we'll go ahead. I'll put it out on the screen as quickly as I possibly can too.
Sure. So for anybody watching, my name right here, C.A. Knuble. You can find me on any social media like that. Everything straight across the board, including TikTok. As far as my website, you can go to caknuble.com. That also has all of my links. And also for my mental health, I am still doing interviews if anybody is interested. So you can just go to mentallyKillproject.org and fill out the little request form. It'll come right to my inbox and I'll reach out.
Okay. Well, guys, definitely make sure we're actually showing it right now as we speak. So it's all social media is her name. Search all platforms, you know what I'm saying? Facebook, Instagram, search them all. We'll definitely be able to get her in touch with you. Most importantly, man, I want to first and foremost from the Beyond the Airways team, want to say thank you for coming on to share your story with us. And most importantly, to show a way to help other individuals get the help that they need as well. We personally believe here that mental health is not just one person's struggle, it's everybody's team to help one person get the help that they're needing. And then most importantly, that person that's struggling don't have to struggle alone. They can work together.
That's right. Thank you so much for giving me the space to share it. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to get ready to check on out. We got one more video we're going to drop on you guys real quick as we do so. And most importantly, we're going to do exactly what we need to do right here on Beyond the Airways. It's your boy T. Wright. And CA, I thank you so much. You are such a blessing. And most importantly, everybody continue to reach out to her because she is going to continue to keep blessing you guys as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
See ya.
See ya. Now, guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna wrap actually because I just saw the timing. So we're gonna get ready to wrap up today's show. But I want to thank everybody. Continue to keep my girl KP Kendra in prayer. That she gets her migraines and stuff under control. It's your boy T Wright. This is definitely the biggest part of my day. I love you guys to the deep part of my soul, and I hope you have a blessed one. Be out.